What inspired the books? Like, when did you sort of say, you know what, I'm gonna start writing? I'm gonna start writing.
So I had a very special grandmother. She was, her name was Faye. It was almost 25 years ago. And I started just writing stories down and reflecting a lot, just kind of dealing with her loss and really missing her a lot. And then really thought, oh, these are kind of fun. I'd really like to share these. She always wanted me to kind of understand, you know, how to show people respect and how to show people love. And her family had immigrated to Utah as well, and so she was born here. I met my papu, who was also born here. So we have a church downtown, Holy Trinity, and they were introduced to each other by a cousin, and out in front of church, and then married a few months later out in the same church. So.
You spent a lot of time with her in the kitchen.
Each book is highlighting a different lesson, and then also a different dish as well, and kind of the story around that dish. And so, for example, the patience one is, if anyone's made up with lemonade, they know, you know, the getting the eggs in there and not having them scramble and everything is, even when you're being so patient and taking your time, it can still happen. She was just never in a rush. You know, it was always like, let's just do it really well, and let's make it with love. And so each book kind of revolves around something like that. The family traditions one is an experience I had as a young child. I couldn't roll the yiayias. It just, you know, their shapes, they were just like whipping it together, and it was, you know, they'd have a tray done in 5 minutes, and I was an hour later and I couldn't even get one right. And she was always just like, you know, just really patient. Like, you know, we've had so many years to practice this and get really good at it. And ultimately all that matters is we're here together doing something special and learning a tradition. And for me, when I became older and understood the level of investment she put into me, you know, that was something that I just appreciated so much. She cared about how I turned out, you know, and that was really important. And so I was trying to figure out a way to kind of show tribute to those other grandparents, because although I didn't know them as well or even have an opportunity to meet them, they were just ingrained in who my parents were, obviously, and how I was raised and all of that. And so I kind of added a hummingbird collection into the store, because when we would sit out on the patio, my yiayias would say if the hummingbird came to visit, she felt like it was Papu Ted visiting her, and telling her just like, I'm here, everything's all right. And so I added some hummingbird products to just kind of represent those that they're in us, but not with us. My daughter is Cora. She's Cora Faye, so she has Yiayia's middle name, and or as her middle name. And I'm very lucky. My parents are both here in Salt Lake, and so she gets to spend a lot of time with them. And she's doing a lot of cooking and baking and things like that. My dad is an Orthodox priest, a Greek Orthodox priest, and so he's kind of given her the religious side of things. And then, you know, my mom's kind of showing her different lessons and aspects of the heritage and things like that. But yeah, now that I'm kind of watching it from her perspective, I'm just so grateful that they're here and they can spend that time together. I think, sorry, I'm kind of getting emotional about it, but I think Cora will just, you know, appreciate that for the rest of her life.
Do you have any favorite traditions in terms of the Greek traditions, or, you know, is there a favorite sort of time of year? Or
Oh, Easter for sure. Easter for sure. And so when you said, what is your favorite book, you get to kind of ask me that. I don't have favorites because they're all special in a different way. But if I had to pick, if you told me I had to pick that one, just simply because that time of year has always been so special to me. And I loved the tradition of it and the symbolism of everything. And that time we did in the book, there's, the event where all the women are there together making the cookies, and that was real. That really happened. And that was one of my favorite times. My Aunt Kate she was actually the one that called me kukla.
Tell me about what Greece means to you.
Well, so when I was a junior in college, I always wanted to study abroad because when I was growing up, I grew up in Utah in the 80s. It was a very different place than it is today. And my parents made a pretty conscious decision not to teach us the language. So we grew up not knowing how to speak Greek. And that was kind of, my brother and I always used to say, when you ask people the genie question, if you had a genie in a bottle, that was kind of both of ours. If we had a genie and we had a wish, we'd just know how to speak Greek fluently. And so that was kind of always a goal of mine. So when my junior year in college, I spent a semester in Athens. What Greece means to me is just, I just think there's such a beautiful, I love my Orthodox faith. I think that part of my life is so strong. And I think it's beautiful, and it just really resonates with me. And so I think Greece is kind of just, it's the place where all of it came from. And I'm so grateful that my family, we're very blessed here in the United States, and we've had an amazing experience, but I'm so glad that they didn't forget that part because, it gave them so much, and I think it gave us so much. And so it's kind of just the root of where everything came from. I'd like to get them in front of more people and just share them with more people, because I think once people have them, it really resonates. And they say, oh, I have, a similar feeling with a grandparent or a parent. And so it's kind of a way, I think, for grandparents to read it with grandchildren, or, and then to be able to talk about it and say, oh, the yiayias recipe we used as a kid had this and this, and tell stories about it. I think part of it too is kind of understanding what age the books work for, and it spans a lot. So on our listing, it says 3 to 10, and that's because the illustrator did beautiful, very animated, colorful images that I think can work for really young children as well. And then the lessons can kind of work for all the way up to 10, even up to a little older. I have some friends that have said, oh, my nephew, we're kind of working with, lying and understanding the importance of honesty and being truthful and things like that. So it can, the age can kind of span. And so I think that's maybe what I would want people to know is, even if it feels like, oh, life lessons, that's heavy, that's more for an older child. I think the stories and the food and the things that they'll see, in family traditions, there's the red Easter eggs and things like that. I think there's things that younger children will still recognize, even if the lessons don't 100% connect right in that moment. And so I think that's what I would like everyone to know, is that even if you have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, you could still read it to them at the same time, and it'll work for them in different ways.
Always a fan of creatives, and then I'm just a fan of this project.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
I was talking to another author, and he said, we should be at the cafe, with the beads.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we should be
Totally.
sitting outside. And it was exactly like 100%. That's what we should be doing. So anyway, it's a beautiful thing to connect, and I appreciate you taking the time today too.